I think of AI right now in real estate as a really good assistant, not giving the assistant the keys to the castle and having to make executive decisions without oversight, but first being an enhancement to me. It's not meant to replace all this stuff yet, but it is a damn good advisor.
Today's guest is Ari Rastegar, founder and CEO of Rastegar Capital. He shares how AI and innovation are transforming real estate development and creating smarter investment opportunities nationwide.
I deal with a lot of people, a lot of consultants, a lot of lawyers, a lot of everybody. Just bringing the awareness into the firm of use one of the bots, use one of these AI agents, ask it a question, and get people comfortable having their own basic personal assistant. That alone has created so much productivity by itself, which is exciting. And that's just not even the tip of the iceberg.
We've been in the technology industry for 30 plus years, but the legal field and the real estate field seem like they're still stuck in the 70s. Why do you think they are so resistant to AI?
From our business standpoint.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the AI for Business Owners podcast, sponsored by Syngin AI. I am your host, Jeff Torello, and my guest today is Ari. I'm going to have Ari introduce himself in a minute. Just a quick reminder, Syngin is an interesting consulting company. We're really trying to find ways to help companies figure out the right uses of AI and where they should not use AI. I'm a firm believer that AI does not solve every problem. And so I'm not a consultant that pushes the AI can do everything for you. But I do think that I can help in a lot of ways. And so if you're interested or curious, please get in touch and we'd be happy to talk about it. All right, Ari, happy Saturday. Introduce yourself and let's have a good conversation.
Hey, thanks for having me. My name's Ari Rastegar. I'm an attorney by trade. I started my own real estate investment company about 11 years ago. We manage money for public pension plans, insurance companies, hundreds of accredited investors. We've invested in 38 cities, 13 states, 7 different asset classes, from single family home build for rent, large master plan communities, industrial facilities. We're working on 2 massive sites to build some data centers in Texas. Yeah, and so it's a very interesting time. Real estate is a very antiquated business by nature. Certainly at the institutional level, there hasn't been much, innovation in how we build a single family home in, maybe 40 years. And so I'm very, very, very excited about how some of these tools can be used to enhance the process, move us through, just move us along in a way where we can shorten build time, where we're doing some stuff with 3D printing and robotics and just the enhancement of the entire experience. And I agree with you, Jeff. I don't think AI should, even if it could yet, do everything, but certainly be an enhancement mechanism to streamline processes, to take us out of some of the menial tasks, speed up certain processes. And we're certainly experimenting with it as individuals within the firm and as a firm as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces in there that I think are kind of neat. I'll probably want to comment on. 2 thoughts. You jogged a memory that I haven't thought about in quite a long time, but I worked for Intel for quite a while. And in 2003, we did a program where we went and did some small business makeovers to try and show how if you improved some technology in your business, you could gain some productivity. And of course, Intel wanted to sell the processors, whatever. One of the folks that I worked with happened to be a independent realtor in Portland, Oregon. So this is 2003 timeframe. So to put that in perspective for everybody, Wi-Fi was just getting started in 2003. Most everything was wired and the internet was sort of nascent and not on everybody's phone. That's the era we're talking about. And I looked at what this gentleman was doing, and it's typical real estate agent sort of approach, right? He would drive folks around, look at 4 or 5 houses on a Saturday or Sunday. They'd hopefully find one they liked. They'd make an offer. That normal model, right? He wanted to try and improve things a little bit, so he challenged me to come up with some stuff. So one of the things that I offered him was a tablet with a cellular connection as cellular internet and the ability to have his realtor agreements, like right to represent and other things, electronically signed on his tablet so that when he met folks, they didn't have to go back to the office and flip through a book.
Cool.
Right?
That's big.
And it was 2003. And I bring it up only to tell you this. The thing that was the most impactful for him had nothing to do with what Intel was doing. It's when he purchased a Lexus hybrid because he was in Portland, Oregon. And what he was finding is people wouldn't go out looking at houses with him unless he had a car that burnt less gas because
Wow.
that's the area that he lived in. Now, I don't think that would have been the same thing in Manhattan in 2003, but it definitely was in Portland. And what I find interesting is the technology part was nifty, and like he thought that was great and people were fine with it, and they were like, oh yeah, less paperwork, cool, but they cared more about something else. And I look at AI the same way. Like, there's a technology here and it's innovative and there's things you can take advantage of, but if you're not actually solving the problem that needs to be solved, it doesn't really matter. And I know that's a bit of a stretch analogy wise, but you said real estate and I was like, oh shoot, I remember this craziness in the past there. Okay, we can move on from that foolishness. Sorry, I just wanted to tell you a little story. A lot of things that you said, they're wide gamut of stuff. But what I'm curious about is where you think at the moment AI would help you with those things, where you think it wouldn't benefit. And then the thing I'm more interested in actually is this idea of like construction, or like, I'm very curious if there's right. And this is what I want to talk about. Like, where
It's
do you think that's
happening.
happening? Right. Yeah.
There's an incredible 3D printed housing community here in Austin, Texas, where I
One of the
am. And I mean,
companies is from there, isn't it?
yeah, one of the companies here, Icon,
Icon?
is from
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time talking to those folks. Some of it is a little bit cost prohibitive still, but that's ending. Like, meaning we are getting to a place where not only is it not cost prohibitive, but what it can do now that's very interesting. And again, this happens in iterations, right? Like, you see what robots are doing now. It might seem rudimentary, but with information technology grows exponentially and accelerates exponentially, as we know. So, one thing that's very interesting, because we have a housing crisis across the United States, no question, we're 5 million houses short of what we actually need in new single family homes. We're 500,000 houses short in Texas alone, which is an astronomical number. And one of the big innovations, that seems kind of nonsensical, but it's real, is it takes longer to get a permit to build a house than it does to actually build the house. And so when you look at just dealing with different counties and permitting, and if you're demolishing something, if you're all of the things, the paperwork that goes in, because the cities and the counties, municipalities are in the dark ages of how they deal with paper processing. I mean, quite literally, there's things that aren't even electronic still. I mean, in major metropolitan cities, I'd like to believe, in the grand scheme of things, Austin is relatively tech forward. Some have called it Silicon Hills. Tesla's global headquarters is here. So you would think that, but it's just really not there yet. So finding any way to shorten those timelines, whether it's the building itself or some of the 3D printed single family homes, what would normally take, 7 or 8 months is being done in 6 weeks. So when you take the financing costs and the construction loans and how interest compounds during that time, that shortening the time frame like that is a profound savings that can then be passed along to the end user consumer that can start to deal with some of the pricing issues. Same thing with material costing, but also if we can shorten by using, some of the AI, some of the technology, maybe not even AI, maybe just like DocuSign, in some instances, and shorten the permit processing, and then you can shorten the building time. You're talking about a freaking revolution in the savings and the cost prohibitive nature of what some houses have started to become, where a lot of it has to do with the financial engineering or the structures and the mechanics of how they're done, the timelines it takes to do it, the amount of labor cost that goes into building a house. So we're right on this precipice where, with the 3D printing, there is robotics that's going into some of the building. There is some AI that's being worked into how it's printed and processed, but we're right at this tipping point where we now have software that we use that scours land sites for potential development. It's an AI software that does it, still rudimentary, but very effective. I think of AI right now in real estate, in our private equity real estate world, as a really good assistant. Really good assistant. Not giving the assistant the keys to the castle and having them make executive decisions without oversight, but first being an enhancement to me. Like, you're just using Chat GPT alone, the amount that I put through Chat GPT in terms of now contracts to look at. Again, not the end all be all, but I have it redline agreements. I ask it questions about much more complicated things, asking much more comprehensive prompts. Again, as an advisor, same thing where the AI is now scouring land sites. It's not making the final decision, but it is giving us more options. Now you can go take using different softwares to do renderings, blueprint renderings, or architectural renderings based upon existing zoning of what that could kind of look like. And then you have the 3D printing component and the robotics. And when you start to bring in the robotics becoming much more refined in their skill sets, if it can build some of these other things, it can do some of the more, safety hazard prone parts of building, all of that together, although, as I said, not there yet, close, like very, very close, which would spur such a massive productivity boom again for a business that is so wildly analog because the people, well, a lot of reasons are the people that run the real estate business are the wealthiest people in the world that run the real estate business are in their 70s and 80s. And I don't think this is how it's been done. So it's going to do it. This new generation coming in that's running billions of dollars of stuff too is grew up at least hybrid in the digital and analog age. Like I'm a millennial, or I think they changed it to zillennial or something, where I'm right in the middle of, I had full analog life and I was lived in the digital, in the digital age as well. And so it's exciting and it's cool. And like I said, it's not for everything, as you said, astutely. It's not meant to replace all this stuff yet, but it is a damn good advisor and a damn good assistant. And just like any advisor, you don't listen to everything they say. Some things they say you like, just like a mentor, some things you ignore. And, and you need human intelligence to know the discernment of what to, listen to and what not to.
I do think that there is a good amount of productivity value in individual using any of the chatbots. Doesn't really matter, ChatGPT, whatever.
Dude, it is apps, just that alone, and bringing as a founder and a CEO, I started this business with a $3,500 loan. As I mentioned, we've invested in 38 cities, 13 states. We have billions of dollars in our development pipeline at this moment. So I deal with a lot of people, a lot of consultants, a lot of lawyers, a lot of staff, a lot of everybody. Just bringing the awareness into the firm of, use one of the bots, use one of these AI agents, ask it a question, and get people comfortable having their own basic personal assistant in their smartphone or on their, on their computer. That alone has created so much productivity by itself, which is exciting. And that's just not even the tip of the iceberg.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the things we talked about before the podcast previously was that there's a lot of material and content out there focusing on, hey, you personally can get a productivity benefit just by using this as an assistant. And I think that honestly, moving forward, there will be a point in time where if you're not using AI to do your job in some way, then you're competing with people who are.
I think it's already now. I think
I
we're
think it is in
already
some
in that
cases, but
place.
there's places where it's still currently frowned upon. Like if you get into the medical field, they'll all hate if someone's talking to an AI. Now, here's the fun part. They are, but they're doing what
They're
you're
just not telling
suggesting, right?
anybody.
Like, if a doctor's struggling with what do I think are the possibles here, asking ChatGPT for an opinion of, validates for the doctor. Oh, I was thinking about those three. I don't think the fourth one's relevant. Good. At least I'm on the right path. And then they go do the research they need to do, or they talk to a colleague, whatever. But some folks would frown upon that. Some folks would look at it and go, wait, you asked the AI, but aren't AI, can't you not trust them? And aren't they bad at?
What's the point? What's the harm in asking? It's your own discernment of whether or not to listen to the damn thing. Like, I think that's like banning books. It's like the book didn't do anything. Like, what does that have to do with anything?
But it does seem like people do think they should ban books occasionally. So not that you're saying something
Well, some
wrong, but
people also think they should be dictators and destroy people's human liberty. There's
I'm
some
aware.
people think everything,
Yeah.
so, like, so that
No,
the
I
realm of
agree.
human stupidity never surprises me.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that people do that are not always in their best interest, or at least not in the best interest of others. one of the things that I find interesting about the framing, there's a lot of hype about AI being amazing and perfect and good. And that's probably where I tend to want to round that edge off, right? I don't agree that it's perfect. What I try to tell people and get them to comprehend is underneath the hood, if you take away the word artificial intelligence, we're all just dealing with software. And what drives the artificial intelligence boom at the moment is the probability engine. And it's just a real quick, like every answer an AI comes up with exists between 0 and 1. And that sounds weird. And it should sound weird because it's weird. However, there's a lot to this that makes sense if you break it down a little bit. As an example, if you've been in a field and you've done a job for a decent amount of time, it doesn't matter what the job is. You have seen trends. You've seen this is the way this is going to go. This is how this is going to turn out.
Patterns. You see or
Yeah,
see a pattern.
right. Because we're all human. And in some cases, the math just works out. And what happens here is the AI's engine is able to recognize those patterns in a lot of cases better than humans can because we can. But also, the last piece of this that I think clicks for everybody, if you just sit back for a minute and think about how many words do you use every week, I would wager that it's not more than about 5,000 total unique
That's a big
words.
number.
I
Yeah,
know, I'm
sure.
trying to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, right? 5,000 words is not a lot of words in the world of language,
Especially
right?
to say that you're fluent.
Yeah, completely, right? But what we're getting to is if you were to analyze our conversation here, we would probably be pretty repetitious in the things we say from one podcast to another, from one conversation to another, from one deal to another. There's a lot of repetition in there. And so if I now bring you back to AI as a probability engine, and I ask you to think about the probability that you've said those words before or that you've seen that pattern before, the AI can recognize that. And so it's able to do word things that look amazing to you. But what it's really doing is living in the world of the repetition and probability of how we all interact.
It's a
Okay,
great
fine.
way to explain it. That makes perfect sense.
And I don't mean that as a negative. I mean that as here's a little peek under the hood, right?
Explanatory. Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
sense.
So now when you look at it and say, okay, I want to ask this thing to help me propose an answer or review a proposal or whatever, why is it pretty good at that? Well, because the proposals are pretty similar to other proposals that have existed, and your response is pretty similar, and on and on and on. And so the way I tend to teach people when I'm, doing consulting or whatever is A, think about the AI as an 80% accurate guesser. All right. Eight.
Based upon patterns, based upon
Yeah.
history,
Yeah.
based upon repetition, based upon, that.
Exactly. And where that comes out if you want to test it is like, okay, let's say you have an AI that you have provided access to your email. So to help you to simplify, to automate all those things. One of the first things that you want to do is have the AI look at your existing sent items. How do you typically respond to stuff? Right? What's your style? What's your tone? How do you talk to business people versus friends or family or maybe your business partner? Maybe you and your business partner swear at each other all the time, but when you're talking to, one of your attorney buddies, maybe you don't. Okay, fine. Or maybe it's the opposite. Doesn't matter. But the AI can easily see that pattern and replicate it. And that looks like magic to anyone who doesn't understand the math. And I don't need people to understand the math. But what I want you to get to is, okay, so if you're resistant and thinking, I don't want this AI to help me, why? It's good at a lot of things, better than some ways than you are, not replacing you, but augmenting you and removing some of the BS repetition that you probably go through every day that it could do easily. I'll give you a simple example. How many times have you personally, Ari, or anybody listening, had to spend more than 10 seconds negotiating a rescheduled calendar item? Okay, like just especially the bigger that meeting is, the more schedules in the mix, that's a geometric progression of silliness, right? why does any human ever need to do that task? If someone says, I can't make this meeting, why can't my AI bot find the next thing that makes sense with all these calendars? And I don't even never need to see that. Just do it and move the meeting. And everybody goes, oh, the meeting moved to Tuesday and we're done. And I've never even been bought. But right now, how many people, and if you're lucky enough to have an assistant, good for you. How many folks are spurning human hours on a task that is not adding value, right? I am just picking one silly example. I know you could probably think of 10 more, all of you, but this is where I think AI has independent productivity value. But then there's another component to this, and this one's a little more complicated, but I think is worthy of thinking through. If all the employees in your business are using AI in some way as an assistant to gain productivity advantage, that's great. They spend less time on bullshit tasks, they spend more time on value. Cool. But at the same time, there are tasks that they do that they probably should not touch. But right now, it has been difficult to automate some things because not everybody's a programmer and not everybody wants to pay for custom software. And the bigger problem with custom software is not paying to get it written, but paying to keep it running. Because if Ari and I sat down for 20 minutes and we thought about a specific problem he wants to completely get rid of, I could design software and have it written and it would solve that problem. But it would only solve the things Ari thought to tell me in those 20-minute window and only the requirements that I gathered at the time. And there will be some technical glitch Ari didn't think of or I didn't think of that gets in our way. And so we deploy it and Ari's like, man, this works great, except when it doesn't. And that's where the sticking point tends to be. So always building custom is not the answer all the time. Sometimes it is. But what is a cool capability and what AI is really good at is trying to stitch these individual pieces together to make an automation or to make a workflow or to make a thing where if you want, you can even have the AI pull a human into the loop and say, hey, look at what I'm doing. Does this look right? Hey, this is what I'm about to do. Do you want to change it? I'll stop preaching for a minute and let you jump in and comment. But
That's interesting.
because what I think I would like to get us to is a point where anyone could call upon the AI or someone to help if they needed to solve a problem they see without having to wait for Microsoft to add that feature or for Google to invent a new thing in Gmail or whatever, which could happen, but you're at the mercy of, and you can always ask for it, but how many times has anybody asked for a feature that's actually been written into software they didn't own, right? It's like never. But here's an example of just a simple one. The underlying piece of this isn't necessarily simple for everybody to implement, but the idea behind it is what I want to get at. It is impossible to keep up on the changes in the AI landscape from my perspective as a consultant, trying to know a lot about everything. And it's just, there's content flying out all day long. Trying to understand what is worth spending time learning and reading into and what's not is an exercise. So what I did was I had one of the folks that works for me write an automation that looks at a list of keywords. And that is a list that's in a Google Doc, so you can just edit that list anytime. And every morning, it uses a news aggregation search tool to look for articles related to those topics within the last 23 hours, so it doesn't duplicate from day to day, that are really high reviewed, lots of stars, getting a lot of traction. I want to see the top noise, right? And then it grabs articles on those topics and then it prunes to just the top 2 on each topic. And then it takes those at 6 a.m. and dumps them into a Slack channel so that instead of reading 4 newspapers in the morning like folks used to do in the robber baron days, right? Or whenever that was, I look at Slack and see headlines that are relevant to me at that moment. And then I click on the ones I want to go get the full context in, and I read the ones I want to read, and I don't bother with the ones I don't bother. I modify that list of keywords as topics come in and out of my either interest level, or if I'm working with a client and there's a particular topic that I want to make sure I'm up to speed on, I add that topic for 6 weeks or 2 months or whatever, and then change it up, et cetera, et cetera. That type of personalization is what I'm really focusing on, right? What if everybody could have that level of personalized content distribution? Would that help you? Would that be valuable to you as an example?
I think it would be.
because I used off the shelf tools and was mostly a click and drag kind of exercise to go click, 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 bing, bang, boom. And you don't have to make it be in a Slack channel. You can make it be an email. You could make it be a text. It doesn't matter. None of that's relevant. These are the types of things that I don't think people are spending too much time thinking about, but that could be value add. It's not necessarily, automate my email, but it's more automate my knowledge. Like, think of it this way. What if you didn't even do it for work? What if you just did it for your passions? If you're a Formula One fan or if you're a hockey fan, it doesn't matter. But like, what if you curated that content rather than scrolling through Reddits or something? Could be about the latest news in 3D printing, right? It could be any of that.
Totally could.
These are the types of things that I think people believe are out of reach or too complicated for them to go sort of do on their own. And that's the thing I want to break. That's the perception I want to shatter, because these are relatively easy tasks to get to with AI assistance. And, for example, one of the tools that I use is called N8N, just the letter N, the number 8, N8N. And if you were to say to ChatGPT, hey, I want to write an automation in N8N to do X, whatever it is that you think you want, it would totally tell you exactly what to do step by step. And you could do that in N8N while it prompted you to.
Dang,
it.
that's
And
cool. I'm gonna look that
you
up.
wouldn't know what you were doing from the programmer perspective, but so what? You don't need to know. And I think what I've calculated is it costs me 2.5 cents a day for that script to run every morning,
Dang, that's cool.
which
Very, very cool.
is worth my time, right? Now, let's turn it around. You could do the same basic thing that I'm talking about, but you could have it be whenever someone emails your inbound company address, let's say the info address, right? Or you could make it be support. You could do whatever. You can have the AI look at that email, determine if they're asking for something common, like, hey, can I see this document, or can I see your plan, or whatever. And the AI can immediately respond to that without a human having to see it or touch it. Or the AI could look and summarize that email and send it to someone and say, hey, the person's asking this. This is what I thought I would respond with. Do you want to change my answer? That's the human in the loop part I was talking about. And again, you can go ask ChatGPT or whoever you're talking to help you figure that out and play with it and tweak it. And when it doesn't work, tell ChatGPT, hey, this is what happened. And it'll say, oh, move this over there, change that. You're done. It's fixed. It's like having your own dedicated personal programmer. What I find from a consulting perspective is more that needs me more than it needs ChatGPT is the things that are a little bit harder to solve. Like, you've got pain points in your business. Everybody does. It's part of business. Which
Business is
one?
solving problems.
Exactly right. Which ones are A, super impactful that you want to get rid of or solve, and B, are good candidates for AI to solve versus bad candidates for AI to solve, right? And when you're not just doing that personally, but you're doing that for a group or an organization or a team, it's cheaper to pay me to help you figure out those answers, to know where to go with the AI, than it is to poke and prod and try 5 different things or 5 tools or on a problem that AI is not going to help you solve, right? That's the difference. But like, I really want to try and empower everybody independently to just go mess around. Don't spend it in foolish amount of money. But there's a lot of power that you can tap into. It's like having your own personal Uber nerd that can just answer the questions that you have about whatever your topic is.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the things that were sitting in the middle of your head, Ari, about how to use AI, but I just wanted to put some thoughts there.
You definitely gave me a good lecture on all of it.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to lecture you. You've told folks in the business to use AI. Has anyone come to you with an interesting revelation that they've done something that you didn't explicitly tell them to do or not to do, and you were like, oh wow, look at what they... Yeah, can you give me an example?
Of course. We're using all those automations. We use Slack. I have all my news curated. We're definitely have them in our emails. We have automated responses on all the info emails, like all these very, very, very rudimentary, things we've been we've been doing for quite some time, and they just keep getting better, and refining funnels, and I mean, because there's so many different sides of the business. There's fundraising, there's marketing, there's legal, there's asset management, development, construction. Real estate touches a lot of things. So I'm in general always astounded by how smart the people that work with us are, and the innovation they come up with, anything, whether technologically or human innovation. So I'm always learning. Like, I feel like I'm last to the party, now, and all this stuff.
You're involved in both real estate and the legal world, both of
I'm
which are.
I'm an attorney by trade, but
Oh, okay.
I guess as a developer, you're always in the legal world with lawsuits and all sorts of shit. So I guess so,
Yeah.
maybe.
Both of those industries still feel pretty antiquated. Why do you think they are so resistant to? I mean, and I don't mean just AI, right? We've been in the technology industry for 30 plus years, but the legal field and the real estate field seem like they're still stuck in the 70s.
Well, lawyers don't want you to take their job, so they're the ones that make the laws. So be sure that they're going to make laws that it can't take their job.
Fair enough. What about realty?
Real estate is also a big word. You have real estate agents, brokers, and then you have real estate owner, operator, developers, construction. It's a very loosely used word for us, like as owner, operators, investment managers. The people that have run it, because to make, to be running a multi-billion-dollar business in real estate, the people that usually run these firms by that time, if even if they had family money or in their 70s, it takes a certain amount of time, historically, to do that. So the people that are running the show historically maybe don't have the technological desires, because it's not how they did it, and that's very much changing now. So I'm very excited to see the innovation across the board, and see how we can, do this stuff faster, quicker, better, cheaper, more efficiently, and most importantly, pass that along, to the end user, so we can start to solve a lot of these problems.
Are you actually seeing some movement now finally in that
Yes,
direction? Yeah.
yes, huge
Okay.
movement, actually, a huge net effective to what was there. So
Is that starting at the grassroots level, like independent builders, or do you see it starting with like a, I don't know who the right answer is, Pulte Homes? I don't know. I pick something. I don't know the right answer.
I think there's definitely more the techie startup prop tech groups that are starting to lead the charge and have some cool new tools or gadgets or use cases. The bigger machines, as I said, are a little bit slower to adapt. They have logistics operations, manufacturing, relationships, financing. That once you start to really disrupt that, you're disrupting the core of how their businesses operate, and people are resistant to that level of change, because when the disruption happens, it'll be an earth-shattering disruption, which I think for the better, and we're going to push the envelope to lead that innovation. Quite frankly, as a 43-year-old CEO, this is what we're trying to do, which is, be able to create better returns for our investors. And the way to do that is to create more efficiency and cost savings, and all that kind of stuff too. So
Okay, makes sense. What's something that you would love to have solved? Not necessarily like tell me about your business itself, but just in general from the high level perspective.
well, from our business standpoint, I would love to see the speed at which we get through the permitting and zoning process completely revolutionized. Like, it's just so, 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 so antiquated. And so just being able to see it digitized and see it automated in some regard, so that instead of taking 18 months or 2 years, or sometimes one of my projects to rezone has taken 8 years in Dallas, Texas. So arguably one of the top cities, in the United States or the world. 8 years, mind you, it is a comprehensive rezoning, but 8 years? I mean, I can make a case that it could have been done in 8 minutes. And so, I seriously, and so there is some delta between that, of how these councils work and how the vote works and where the paperwork goes and the demolition permit. We're getting a demo permit in Austin is taking 6 months to tear down an old dilapidated building. And this is systemic across, this is not just an Austin thing. As I said, Austin is very forward thinking compared to some other cities. So, I'd like to see all of that change pretty dramatically so we can really get the product out that people desperately need.
I don't have a ton of insight into this particular aspect, so I'll ask some stupid questions and you can ignore the ones that don't aren't relevant. But is the problem that it's manually driven? Is the problem that there's a
Yeah,
foolish bureaucracy that there's so many
it's
steps to
both.
jump? It's
It's
both of
both.
those.
So,
Yeah.
some of it's not. Some of it's just manual and the systems and the software or lack of software that people are using. It's just in the dark ages. That's just one. Yes, the bureaucracy and stuff is a part of it, and that can also be enhanced. But just the technological part of itself, just how documents are processed and when they're filed, and they need to be stamped by a notary, like in person, and like this, like you have to be there to actually sign something things that are so beyond absurd. Just enhancing those back to your 1% improvement a week. I mean, it's like it can go a long way, but I appreciate the
No, part of why I was thinking that was trying to work out. It's just the way my brain works. I don't know that I'm solving any problems today, but what would be the incentive for the city or the town to, right, modernize or automate? Because I
oh
don't know
my
that.
God, costs it caught everything that you would think. What's the reason anyone would do any of this for anything? Save money, have efficiency, serve the city better, build more, like the answer to that question is the answer to any reason why anybody would do any of this.
Yeah, but don't they have to get budget approval from people who aren't going to see that there's value versus
I mean,
because it
that's
works
not
today?
now.
That kind of.
Now we're pontificating about
Yeah,
just
right.
government in general. So
Yeah,
that I don't know. Much smarter people than me can figure out politics and the incentives and that kind of stuff. I want to build great houses, build great projects so businesses can be efficient, so people can have homes, so they can have apartments, so we got data centers to power these things. I just want to put the products in place that we can, help the community just have enhanced standard of living, enhanced work standards. So, what do I know?
yeah. No, I was just speculating. I didn't expect you to have an answer, and I certainly don't think I have an answer by any stretch. I'm not remotely that person.
I'm sure maybe someone much smarter than me listening to this can figure it out and they can let us know.
Yeah, it seems like the way to try and impact that is to find the right incentive to help the cities and towns go through that
Totally.
modernization effort
Yeah. Yeah, I
somehow.
think that's right. I think it'll definitely get there, but hopefully your consulting and your insight into this will help a lot of people start to solve the problems that they can solve at their own businesses and their own lives and their own things.
Indeed.
And I think that'll be great. But I appreciate you having me today, Jeff. I
Yeah.
appreciate the lecture. It was very helpful.
I appreciate you taking the time and thanks for your input as well.
Thank you, buddy.
Alrighty.